All right, I think it's recording now. Uh, all right. Hey, want to welcome you guys to our CSM video for the week. I am sitting here with Zach Swanson. He's on this side. Am I pointing to like you, or am I pointing to the side of the screen on your screen?
Well, I'm pointing to you right now.
Oh,
So
yep.
you're,
Can I
yeah.
rearrange the screens? You guys, everybody just keep watching as we both figure out how to do this. Nope, it has them side to side. All right, whatever. Uh, um, he is our newest small group leader, and so we're going to spend some time getting to know him and just talk to him a little bit. And hopefully, as we continue to do these videos, we'll get to know more leaders, get to know more students, and just have some fun with it. So, Zach, why don't you give us a 30 to 60-second condensed autobiography?
Oh gosh.
Where were you born?
Might regret that. I was born in New York City, and let's see. My dad was a pastor of a small Baptist church. There, my mom homeschooled me and my four siblings. When I, let's see, kind of fast forwarding
Sure.
quite a bit. When I graduated high school, I went to a small Christian college in Wisconsin and studied theology for a couple years. And then after realizing that God wasn't calling me into the ministry, I moved out here to help take care of my grandparents on my mom's side, and currently live with my grandparents on my dad's side. And I am working two jobs, still working through school, and I'm really excited to be a part of CSM at CBC.
Awesome. Good job. Good use of the initials there. What order are you in your siblings?
Oh, baby of the family all the way.
You're the youngest.
Yeah, so I know how to get what I want. Whether I ask for it or not, my mom always made sure to give me the best of the best. At least that's what my siblings tell me.
Yeah. What's the age gap between you and your oldest sibling?
10 years.
Okay. Okay. So not too bad. Not too bad. What do you feel like is the thing you definitely got away with more than your siblings?
Probably video game time, because I was told that my two oldest sisters only got like 30 minutes a day, and I started with an hour, and then from there I just blew the roof off.
Yeah, but who's gonna stop the baby, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's like Jack Attack. For those of you who don't know, that's a reference to the animated short from The Incredibles. It's great.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Really,
short.
if you haven't seen that by now, I mean, come on, get with it, people. You've got nothing but time on your hands right now, and we know you all have Disney Plus, so
it's on Disney Plus. Yeah,
there it is. Yeah. Let's say, what is the biggest misconception you think people in Sioux City, Iowa have about people who live in New York City?
I think it is that we, or I guess they, are rude. You get that a lot from movies, and maybe your parents or grandparents may have told you that, but don't believe it. It's a bunch of bunk. I think that there's plenty of rudeness to go around the world, but there's also plenty of love. And I think when you are crammed inside a fast-moving subway trying to get where you're going with 50 other people, it's inevitable that you might rub shoulders with the wrong person. But in general, people in New York are actually really nice.
Good. What is the thing that you miss the least? Is it being crammed in a subway?
Actually, no, I really do enjoy that, believe it or not. I would have to say probably being woken up in the middle of the night by like sirens and helicopters and stuff like that.
Sure.
It's, yeah.
Not as many midnight sirens going on right now where you are?
Oh, let me hear. No, not getting any.
No? All right. Let's say, since like schedules have shifted, people have found themselves indoors more. What do you find yourself doing more now that you're stuck inside a little bit?
Well, I think I mentioned previously that I am with my dad's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And this has just been an incredible opportunity I found to really deepen my relationships with them.
Sure.
Trying to help them a lot more with things like cooking and yard work, little projects that maybe I didn't have time for before.
Mm,
But on a more personal level, just like really trying to ask them meaningful questions and
yeah,
just get to know them better.
that's awesome. What have been like some of the questions you feel have borne the most fruit? Like as questions where you maybe got a little bit better response than you expected. Can you think of any? Thinking of students for students to be able to ask their grandparents, students who are
Oh
watching this
boy.
video to ask their grandparents. Don't mess this up, Zach.
Yeah, there's so many ways you can do it. And I think, everybody's grandparents are different. So I think what probably, hold on one second. What probably works the best, um, you guys know that like your grandparents love to talk, right? They probably love to tell stories. Um, Maybe they just are waiting for for someone to ask them, about their past. And
Mhm.
so I found that asking my grandpa about his time in the Navy, or my grandma about her experience as a nurse, because it's something they did for longer than heck, I think I was alive.
Mm.
Definitely than you guys have been alive. So, there's, I can't think of any like specific response I got, but yeah, I think that's definitely a way to go. Find something that they're passionate about, because
Mhm.
everybody loves to talk about what they're passionate about.
For sure, for sure. And so that'll work to segue in. One of the things I get passionate about is when I get to teach students. And so we are starting a new series tonight called More Life. And it's a 2-week series to set us up for Easter. And so tonight's talk, to be honest, is kind of a downer to prep people. But that's kind of a lot of life can sometimes be a downer, can sometimes be disappointment, and that's a reality we experience. Could you share like a story about a time that you have been disappointed or let down by something or someone, or just share about a situation like that?
Yeah, sure. Um, so one of the probably greatest disappointments that I faced in my life up to this point was when I was like 18, 19 years old. And I was in the living room. My mom was talking on the phone, and all of a sudden, like, she got really serious and she started crying, which my mom, like, I never saw my mom cry. And found out that my grandpa, her dad, he was working on a roof of a church on the west side here in Sioux City,
Mhm.
and he fell and broke his neck, and he passed away
Oh my
shortly
goodness.
thereafter. And that was obviously really very much a disappointment. There was a lot of emotion. It was really difficult to see my mom, especially going through the pain of losing her dad. And um, I think it got a lot harder then after that, when my parents told me that we would be moving out to Nebraska, of all places.
Wow.
Because at that point, I had lived my whole life in New York and had no intention of ever living really anywhere else, least of all this place called Nebraska. I mean, what is that?
How could that be disappointing?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like you don't plan for these things, but
Hmm.
um, it was really hard, I think, for the first few months, and um, it's kind of cool how, like, I ended up leaving, going to college in Wisconsin, and then God brought me back a couple years later, and this time it wasn't by um, purely God's choice; it was also by my choice.
Mhm.
And Yeah, so
That's
that
great,
whole
man.
period of time was
Yeah.
pretty hard, especially like getting used to not having internet, fast internet, and Like I had to go 2 miles to the top of this hill. I'm not kidding you. 2 miles away from my house, I'd go for jogs just to get reception so I could make a phone call.
Wow. All right. Well, that would be a disappointing experience, I think, for a lot of us. And that transition, I don't think I knew that you moved straight from New York to Nebraska. Would be a crazy transition. That would be definitely tough. But I think a lot of our students could probably relate to, seeing their parents go through something and trying to be there for them through that. So thank you very much for sharing, Zach. Thanks for being with us tonight. Hopefully we'll see you in the Zoom call a little later.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks a bunch. That's it.
Yeah. Can I just say shout out to my 9th grade boys? You rock.
There it is.
There it is.
Rock.
You better be watching this. If you're not watching this on Wednesday, I'm going to give you guys a lot of crap.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Zach.
And we're going to keep youth group going. Want to remind you that tonight at 7:30, we're going to have youth group on Zoom. I'm going to put the address for the Zoom call right below me here, so you guys can dial that in and come join us. We're going to play a game. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about this lesson and just have a good time connecting with each other, because we miss you guys. We miss being with you and being together with you. And, it was good just to talk to Zach and find out a little bit more about his story and have some fun with him, and to hear about some disappointment that he's experienced in his life. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes life can suck the life out of us. Sometimes we can just get knocked down by life. We can think everything's going great, and then life just takes a turn. Now, I'm going to guess that you've felt that way maybe fairly recently. I'm going to guess that over the last couple weeks, you've been able to kind of experience that disappointment. Things have just kind of gone sideways. So here's what I want to do. I like to have a question to start our lesson, and so I want you to, with whoever you're sitting with, or whoever you're talking to or texting with, maybe you're watching this with a friend, that would be awesome. You're watching this with your small group. I want you to talk about a time that you've felt tired, frustrated, or disappointed. And I'm going to give you 60 minutes to talk about that with somebody. If you're not watching this with anyone right now, maybe grab a family member that you're in quarantine with and sit down and watch this together. Maybe text your friend, get on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, get on together and watch it. And answer this question, because I think it's an important one. When was the last time that you ever felt tired, frustrated, or disappointed? All right? I'm going to give you about 60 seconds to answer that question. Go ahead. All right. I'm sure you guys had some great examples of being disappointed. And actually, in our Zoom group tonight, our Zoom CSM group, we're going to talk about that question, because I want to hear some of the things that you guys have to say. But it seems like right now we're living in a continual season of disappointment. Some of you guys really love going to school. I know most of you do. And so you're disappointed you don't get to go to school. I know you guys love hanging out with your friends. You don't get to hang out with your friends as much, or not in the same ways. Some of you, you were affected by sports or hobbies or other things like that. Maybe just things you were looking forward to that just aren't there anymore. And so maybe you're a little disappointed. Maybe you're a lot disappointed. Either way, if you're experiencing disappointment right now, and I'm sure everybody watching this is, it's a very appropriate lesson for this week. Maybe listen up. This lesson's going to be kind of about how we deal with that disappointment, how we work through that disappointment in our lives. We're going to look at a story from the Gospels of where Jesus, where the disciples, where disappointment crept into the moment, and see how they reacted and how they dealt with that. So, I know like disappointment can kind of be a funny thing because so often it crops up out of nowhere. You know, we think life is looking great and life is going awesome, and then something happens. You know, we've talked about that a lot. You know, what do we do in our life where we have our faith, we have what we believe, and something unexpected happens in life, something unbelievable happens in life? What do we do with that? Well, it's kind of like this giant Easter bunny right here that I picked up from the store. I don't know about you guys, but like when I go into the store now, like my hands go in my pockets. I try not to get a cart. I try not to get a basket. And I don't want to touch anything on the shelf. Like, I just want to keep my hands as clean as possible. So I picked this up because I think this actually does a pretty good job. Now, for me, this is the sad intro to the story. I never had these growing up. Never, not once. You see, little Michael Paul grew up allergic to milk. I couldn't have dairy. And so I didn't get any chocolate, but I would get like a couple of boxes of Peeps, which, frankly, let's be honest, are better than this. Seriously, for reals. And next week, we're going to have a little video about Peeps that I think you guys are all going to enjoy. So check that out. But yeah, so these chocolate bunnies, maybe you've gotten a chocolate bunny before. And I know, like, when I was in college, my buddy Greg and we tried to find the biggest chocolate bunnies we could find. And I want to say the ones we found were like 15 pounds, right? And they were huge. They were way bigger than this one. But I remember when you first get it and you take it out of the box, and maybe you've done it too, you get your chocolate bunny and you look at it and you're like, this is like the most chocolate ever. Like, I'm going to love eating this. This is going to be fantastic. This is going to be like the best thing in the world. And you pick it up and you pull it out of the box and you're like, that's really light. That's a lot lighter than I thought it should be. Also, I have a lot of questions why he has a cell phone, but we're not going to get into that. But yeah, you pick up your chocolate bunny and you think, oh, this is pretty light. You know, I don't know. And you might go in to take that big bite out of your chocolate bunny. And what happens when you take the big bite out of the chocolate bunny? Well, I don't know if this is going to pick it up on camera, but it's hollow. It's empty inside. You know, we get excited about this big old piece of chocolate, and you're like, this is awesome! I'm going to eat this thing for like weeks. This is going to be my quarantine bunny. And you open it up, and you're like, what the heck? Where's the rest of it? And life can be like that. We can think our life looks great, and life is looking great, and something's going to happen that's going to leave us feeling like this chocolate bunny. Not decapitated, no, but hollow inside, empty inside. We're on the outside, we could be looking great, but sometimes life leaves us feeling hollow. And that can be a hard thing for all of us to do. I'm going to put him right like down there so you guys can look at him and he can look at you into your souls. Life can be like that. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a story about kind of a season in my life where I was let down. You guys know that Kristen and I have kind of gone through the adoption process, and we are so happy and so thankful that we have Joanna now. She's a part of our family. But there was a long time where we were going through that adoption process where it was a lot of disappointment. You see, how it would work is we would get an adoption profile presented to us. And so we'd read through it, and it would have some non-specific details, but it would talk a lot about like the child and the background, and we would decide whether or not we wanted our profile shown to this family. And so there were most of them we said yes to, and some of them we said no to, like realizing that probably wouldn't be a good fit for where we are. And so we would reply to these, and it was hard to not get your hopes up, you know, because you start imagining like how things are going to be. And we would reply to these postings, and you send them in, and from time to time we would hear back from, you know, our adoption agency, and they would say, hey, yours is one of 3 families that this family is deciding between. And I mean, you get even more excited then because you're like, well, you made it past this big hurdle, and you're one of 3. Like, this could really be happening. And for a long time, for 18 months, the story we kept getting back was no. Like the family didn't select you, or the family didn't choose you. And that was really difficult because you would start imagining, you would start getting ideas like our little bunny here. You would start thinking about how great things are going to be, how awesome things are going to look. And then you get that disappointment and it leaves you feeling hollow inside, right? Now, here's what I want to remind you. What I needed to be reminded of often was that God never said life was going to be easy. And I think that's a mistake sometimes we have as Christians, as followers of Christ. We think because I follow Jesus, my life is set. My life is going to be golden. God's going to look out for me. God's going to take care of me. But you know what? The Bible never says that God's going to let life be easy. Sometimes life is really hard. Sometimes you're living through a pandemic where you can't hang out with your friends. And that's awful. That's hard. You can't go to school. Like, that's difficult maybe for your parents. Maybe they're struggling, having a hard time right now. Like, maybe they can't go to work. Those things are hard. And there are other things that can happen to us in life that aren't your fault, but they just leave you feeling hollow. You know, maybe your parents have split up before. That's difficult. Maybe your friends have let you down. Maybe someone you know and love has passed away. That would be difficult. That would be hard. Those are things that can disappoint you and leave you feeling hollow. You see, when we experience disappointment, it's so easy for us to turn on God. We want to know why He didn't fix it, why He didn't come through for us, why He didn't answer our prayers. You know, why, God? Why? And God makes a lot of promises to us in the Bible, but He never says it's going to be easy. Never says it's going to work out the way we want it to work out. Now, to kind of take this into the Easter season, which is what we are in, a lot of you guys know the Easter story. And you know how awesome the Easter story ends. But we're not going to focus on that. I want us to go kind of in the middle of the story and a little bit after the middle. And see, I want you to realize when Jesus came onto the scene, I want you guys to understand this. When Jesus came on the scene, His followers were given a new sense of hope because for generations, these people had been waiting for God's Messiah, the person who was going to save the people and bring them back into relationship for God. And the disciples knew Jesus is the one who's going to do that. And that was an exciting, hopeful thing. You know, Jesus talked a lot about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. And the disciples were excited for this. They believed God. They trusted God through Jesus would change the world. And then, seemingly out of nowhere to these disciples, but not as a surprise to God, Jesus died. He was murdered, actually, brutally. And as He died, the people who killed Him mocked Him. I want to read you a passage from Luke chapter 23. If you've got your Bible at home, why don't you open it up? I want you to look at Luke chapter 23 and skim all the way down to verse 35, okay? Listen as I read these words. And the people stood by watching, but the rulers scoffed at Him, saying, "He saved others. Let Him save Himself. If He is the Christ of God, His chosen one." The soldiers also mocked Him, coming up and offering Him sour wine and saying, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." There was also an inscription over Him, saying, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who were hanged railed at Him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." Can you imagine that moment in time as Jesus is hanging on the cross dying? The rulers, the priests, people in the crowd, soldiers, throwing insults at Jesus left and right and mocking Him, degrading Him as He's hanging there dying, being executed slowly. Now put yourself in the position of the disciples. These people who'd followed Jesus for years, who'd hung on His words, who'd studied what He'd said, and had desired to see God bring about the kingdom. They would have been in that crowd too. And they would have been hearing the words of the crowd being shouted out at them. The insults, the mockery. And they would have stood there watching the man who was their Messiah hang on a cross and die. Everything they had hoped for was suddenly and violently taken away from them. They didn't know what was going on. Now, if you have your Bible open or you have it on your phone, go to the next chapter. Go to Luke 24. Because I think there's a really, really cool moment that kind of captures what the disciples were thinking and feeling. So, days later, Jesus has risen again. Spoiler alert, Jesus doesn't stay dead. Sorry, okay? We'll get to that, though. We're going to talk more about that. But the disciples, some of the disciples knew Jesus had come back. It'd been a couple days. Not all of them knew. And so there's this story in Luke chapter 24, and it's talking about a few of the disciples, and they're on the road to Emmaus, okay? And Emmaus was a town. And Jesus appears to them, but not in a way that they recognize who he is. And as the story goes on, they're going to figure out who it is. But there's this exchange that happens where Jesus, kind of in disguise, is talking to the disciples and asking them these questions. And this is how that exchange goes. This is Luke chapter 24, verses 17 through 21, okay? And he, Jesus, said to them, "What is this conversation that you're holding with each other as you walk?" And they, these disciples, stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened there in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, a man who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the third day since these things happened. But we had hoped." And that is what it sounds like when life leaves you feeling empty. The disciples, all the followers of Jesus, had hoped. And that hope was gone in that moment. They had been hollowed out. Life had hollowed them out. You see, because Jesus' followers had seen Jesus work and had heard all of his teachings, their convictions had told them Jesus was who he said he was. Their convictions are those strongly held beliefs. You have convictions too, whether or not you know it, whether or not you say they are convictions. Everybody has convictions. Those are things that we know to be true. And because his disciples had seen everything that had happened, their convictions told them that Jesus was the Son of God. But when Jesus was killed, their circumstances, the situation they found them in, had them questioning their convictions. Now, I've been guilty of that in my life. Of asking God, why is this happening? Why does this continue to happen? My convictions are the things I believe about God, and my circumstances can sometimes happen in such a way that it makes me question my convictions. You see, when things go wrong, our circumstances can challenge our convictions. And the early followers of Jesus knew what you and I also know to be true, that sometimes life can leave you feeling empty. You see, when life is at its most difficult, that moment when the disciples were feeling hollowed out, maybe you this week, maybe right now, you're feeling hollowed out just because of everything going on in the world. When life is at its most difficult, there's usually nothing we can do to fix it. You and I can't take care of this coronavirus crisis on our own. There's nothing we can do to make anything happen any quicker. It's completely out of our control. And maybe things have happened to you that aren't your fault. Maybe you've lost someone you cared about. Maybe you tried to help fix your parents' marriage and that didn't happen. Or maybe you tried to take back mistakes that you've made. But we can't always make life better. We might ask God to fix it, but he doesn't always answer those prayers in the way we like. I remember so many of those times, Kristen and I, praying over these adoption circumstances. And God just said, not yet. Not yet. And that's a hard thing to hear because we're like, God, what have we done? Why do we feel hollow? You know, if you're familiar again with the Easter story, you know how this is all going to play out. But his disciples in that moment, when they're walking down the road, they didn't know what was going to happen next. They felt defeated and hopeless. Like Jesus' followers, we don't always understand why God allows life to be so painful sometimes. So when life leaves us empty, when we recognize we can't fix it, we can't put it back together on our own, I want to challenge you to start asking better questions. Because we all ask questions when it gets into these moments. When life gets hard, when life leaves us feeling hollow, we definitely ask questions. We maybe ask questions of our parents, of our leaders. We definitely ask questions of God. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? But I want to challenge you to ask better questions than that. Because we don't always get the answer to those questions. But here are 3 questions I think can help us refocus and help change our perspective to improve it in those moments where we feel hollow. First question is this: what are my circumstances? Why is life leaving you empty? And is there anything you can do to change your circumstances? You know, if there is something you can do to change your circumstance, I think you need to grab onto that. But if there's not, it's not a bad idea to sit down and say, why am I feeling hollow right now? And maybe it'd be a great idea to write those things down. Write them down so you can see them, so you can read them. It'll make you think about them. Identify why you're feeling hollow. And then ask yourself, what are your convictions? Who do you believe Jesus is? Can you trust Jesus? Why did you start trusting him in the first place? Write down what are those convictions? What are those things that you know to be true in the core of your being? You know, they could be things about God, about faith, about how you understand the world, how God helps you understand the world. What are your convictions? Write them down. And then answer this third question. What will I do when my circumstances challenge my convictions? If Jesus is who he says he is, can you still trust him despite your circumstances? What will you do next time life leaves you feeling empty? It's a hard thing to contemplate. That's a big question. For you middle schoolers, this would be a great discussion to have with your parents. Listen to what they say. How would your parents answer some of these questions for all of you? That would be a great opportunity for you to have a conversation with your folks. And ask them those 3 questions. You know? What are their circumstances? What are their convictions? And what are they going to do when their circumstances challenge their convictions? Because they might be in that space right now. Maybe a conversation with you, with their student, their child, is the conversation they need to have. And maybe those things frustrate you. Maybe you were hoping I was going to give you kind of answers as to why God lets life fall apart sometimes, why we can end up feeling hollow. But not today. Today I want us to sit in the tension of the moment. There's lots of tension in this world. There's no shortage of that. But I want you to take some time, and I want you to think through those 3 questions, because I don't want to fly past them. Because as we've talked about over and over again, for you guys to understand, life is difficult, and life can be hard. And there are times where your circumstances are going to challenge your convictions. And so I want you to take time to really think about those 3 questions. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put those 3 questions on the screen, and I'm going to play some music for 3 minutes. And I want you to take 1 minute with each question and write down the answers to those questions. I'm going to keep them on the screen. They'll go full screen. You'll see those. You'll hear the music. And when the music's done, we're going to get back together, and I want to pray for you guys. All right? So, take a couple minutes right now. Grab your paper. Grab your pen. You can pause this. Go grab that stuff. Get back together and sit down and answer those 3 questions. Hopefully that led to some good conversations you were able to have. Hopefully you got some good things written down there. If you need to take more time to work on that and to write them out, if you need more time to kind of process through that, maybe you feel like after looking that over, you want to talk to somebody else about it. Reach out to your small group leader. Reach out to me. I'm a resource here for you. I would love to talk with you about those things you wrote down. If there's something in there where maybe you're having a hard time kind of wrapping your head around it, let me know, and let's talk about it. I'd love to do just like FaceTime calls or Zoom calls. If you just want to talk one-on-one, we can do that. If you want to talk with your family about it, we can do that. Whatever you guys like. I want to be a resource and be available. Let you know that I love you, I care for you, and I'm still here to support you, okay? So let's pray. God, we don't always have all the answers. And sometimes life can leave us feeling empty. Life can leave us feeling hollow. But God, we also know that is not the life you intend for us. That we don't have to stay feeling that way. Lord, I pray as we reflect and answer those questions, we would be honest with ourselves. We'd be honest with our friends and with our family. Lord, show us those things. Those convictions that maybe need to get stronger. Those convictions we need to explore more. Show us those circumstances. Maybe if there's things we can change, things we can't. Help us understand those. So God, I pray that you'd be working through us this week as we process through those questions. In your name we pray, amen. Thanks guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, Wednesday night, April 1st at 7:30, we're going to have a Zoom call. Putting the number here. Just get Zoom, dial it in. Your folks can help you with that. And I hope to see you then. All right, thanks a lot guys. Bye-bye.